And let's move on and talk about the markets. Jigar Mistry, the co-founder of Buoyant Capital, is now with us on the show. Jigar, morning. I wanted to get your thoughts in on what's happening in the broader markets. Now, the small cap index hit its high on 4th of August. That's just 2.5 weeks ago. And since then, it's down 7.5%. And we continue to see the broader markets underperforming. What have you made of this divergence vis-a-vis the frontliners?
Good morning, Rima. So you're right. See, 3rd August was something that it peaked out at, and it looks like just 13 or 14 trading sessions. And that 7.5% doesn't really do justice, because if you actually look at the composition, there are more than 500 stocks that are down 20% or more as of yesterday. There could be more today, right? Somebody just sent me saying 10% odd stocks today are down at lower circuit levels. So I think that has, to a certain extent, to be expected, because the kind of, if you look at March 2020, and, that's when the small cap index underperformance stopped, which started from December 2017. Since then, the Sensex is up something like 78 odd percent, and the small cap index is up by over 178%. So there is a relatively 100 percentage point move that, or rather outperformance, that we have seen. And frankly, if you compare this to all previous uptrend cycles, this is not the highest. The highest was 2007 cycle. So essentially, there could be some amount of wait here. Take a deep breath, look at the business, and then proceed. It was sort of a mad rush. I think last month when I was on your show, we were arguing that there was like a mad rush, and therefore that needs to be stopped. I think a lot of businesses are now available a good 20-25% lower than their previous highs, and it makes for an interesting case going forward.
Okay, we'll come to the stocks which are looking interesting post this 20-25% decline. But I wanted to get your thoughts in on Bharti Airtel. Now, you seem to have taken notice of this up move that we've seen in Bharti Airtel, because that's not a stock that you've spoken about before. Can you tell us what the runway looks like for Bharti Airtel from here on?
Yeah, it was part of our turnaround themes. When a sector gets decimated, when Reliance Jio came in, there were 13 companies that were, when Jio was done with their plans, there were only 3 remaining. Now, at that point in time, none of your traditional matrices fit. The revenue growth looks very bad. The return ratios look very bad. And at that point in time, that is a turnaround call that you take, that let's assume that this becomes a 3-player market. Even then, those 2 players are, essentially will be Jio number 1 and Bharti number 2. If it were to become a 2-player market, then it's an even better scenario for Bharti, but that's sort of not our base case scenario. Now, going forward, given where Reliance Jio is and where Bharti has been adding subscribers over the last 2 months or so, they've also started taking price increases. I think Jio will eventually reciprocate, and things would look better from there. Also, the way Bharti has gone ahead and digitized their assets like what Jio had done, there is some amount of unlocking that can potentially happen in Bharti. So we have held it for quite a while now. It's still interesting for us.
Jigar, hi, good morning. Prashant here. Any thoughts on Cadila, which actually has corrected quite a bit over the last 2 months or so, and now over the weekend we had that vaccine news flow?
Hi, Prashant. So yes, see, the whole pharma space is essentially was one large COVID opportunity, and then potentially booster shots. With Cadila, you had that incremental COVID vaccine that got approved. But now it's essentially back to basics, right? So, which is looking at where the US pricing is stabilizing at, and which companies are going there in order to take the next patent cliff that emerges over the next 3 or 4 years. Our sense has always been that opportunity is no longer a single molecule opportunity. It's complex generics, it's specialty products, and all these companies have traditionally not fitted the bill there. The one that we own in this space is Sun Pharma, and even there we have seen only part of that. So Taro continues to be under pressure, but the existing business of Sun Pharma at least is doing fairly well. So I think our pick in this space is Sun Pharma. I think that's what we like here.
No, got it. You know, many of the other names we've discussed over the years. There's you like ABFRL, IRCTC, there's United Spirits, SIS you've held for a long time, Max Financials, Bharti you spoke about. You began by talking about how mid and small caps have corrected 20-25%. Some of them are looking interesting now. Anything new you want to highlight, Jigar, which looks interesting now after the fall we've seen?
Yes. So, Prashant, one stock we haven't spoken in the past is Sudarshan Chemicals, right? So, this is one company that, again, we have held for a fairly long period of time. It just happened that we haven't spoken about it. And this business essentially is one where, there are only three pigment player of size in the world. And there is corporate action in the top two players. Plus, the China Plus One strategy will essentially benefit players like Sudarshan Chemical, as they expand their product profile. Now, what had happened is that in their current quarter conference call, they came about and said that, look, COVID wave has been pretty serious. The people who are supposed to come in and inspect the plant, get the product approval is not happening on time. So that will likely be a little bit of a delay, number one. And number two, they also said that, the sort of price increases in terms of fuels, etc., that we would have, initially passed on is something that we haven't been able to pass on. So since the stock has corrected since then, I think it does make for a very interesting bet. It's not a two-quarter stock. You take a step back and you realize that there is a big opportunity in this space. And, you're known with a smaller company, their ability to grow out of a blue pigment and into azo pigment is not very high, even the one that recently got listed. But, this is a player of size, of quality, good return ratios going through a quarter of pain. And that makes, again, for an interesting bet for us.
Okay, that is the stock which Jigar finds attractive now. Thank you very much for joining in with your thoughts on the markets as well as individual stocks. Need to slip into a very short break. On the other side,